Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. Guys, the situation in Ukraine, in the West, in the United Kingdom, in Europe, in America, it's spiraling downwards quickly. Guys, I've been documenting the fall of Western society, the lead up to a global conflict of an industrial scale. Go back through my videos, and things that I said would happen like a year ago, they're coming to fruition now. But not only that, they're happening a lot quicker than I thought. If you guys watched my video yesterday morning, I said the introduction of Storm Shadow, of Scalp, of Taurus, I said that's an inevitability. Later on, yes, that same day, there was an announcement from the Ukrainians, I think it was. I can't remember whether it was Ukrainians or Russians. 12 Storm Shadow missiles have been used to strike targets inside Russia. Guys, we are moving forwards a lot quicker than I thought. Guys, before we get onto this video, can you please like and subscribe and share the video as much as you guys can? Really helps the channel out when you guys do that. Today, we're going to be talking about the potential for conscription. We're going to be talking about nuclear war. We're going to be talking about the escalations in Ukraine and the use of Storm Shadow missiles. I'm also going to give you guys a rundown on how the Storm Shadow missiles are not going to be effective on the front line, why that's relevant at the moment, because the United States have just said to the Ukrainians they're going to give them landmines. I'm going to give you my estimated timeframes for this because there is a logistical issue. Obviously, with the Storm Shadow missiles, a lot of those were already in Ukraine. A lot of those were already, readily available to use. The landmines, I don't know where these things are coming from. I heard reports yesterday that there was a lot of U.S. aircraft landed at Bryce Norton. I don't know if that's true, so we'll talk about that. We'll explore all those, options. And what we're going to do is I'm going to give you the next steps towards global conflict. Guys, a lot of you people were asking on our live stream yesterday, a lot of people were worried about, the threat of nuclear war. I don't think it's on the cards yet until, and it's the reality, guys, until countries start testing. Launching a nuclear weapon, it's not as easy as some people think. You can't just go into the shed and pull one out and dust it off. You need to test it. You need to check it. You need to calibrate it. Although you do need to collaborate with the delivery system. Now, I've said many videos. I think the most likely location for a tactical nuclear weapon to be used is on Russian territory by the Russians themselves in the Kursk region. This would tick all the boxes from the Russians. It would show they're willing. It would show they're able. It would show that they can do that. And it would kind of be an escalate to de-escalate. I don't think that the threat is there yet until we see both sides, the United States and the Russians, test firing their systems. That said, guys, we're living in crazy times. Things are happening faster than I even thought myself. So let's just get into the video, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys, because it really helps me out when you guys do that. So first of all, guys, I want to go to the shared map. I think I should do this every morning now. Where are we? I want to go to the shared map, and I want to show you guys how much ground the Russians are taking on a daily basis, because that sets up for the rest of the video. So you guys can conceptualize how much ground the Ukrainians are losing. And tell me, is there actually a front line anymore, or are the Russians... Hang on, guys, I just got a message. Yes, it's from my source in Kiev. One of them. Oh, okay, nothing. Sorry, guys. It was about chicken wings. Right, guys. I'll get on to the video and I'll talk about the chicken wings afterwards. So this is the situation, what the ground looked like on the 20th of the 9th. I know this is 2 months ago, and I usually give them 1 month update on what's been happening in the last 31 days or whatever. But I wanted to do this 2 months today, just so you guys can get, you can further conceptualize it. This is not just 1 month. It's not just 2 months. This has been going on since the, basically since the start of the conflict. The Russians are pushing and pushing and pushing, and there is nothing left to hold the Russians. The only thing I think that's stopping the Russians is their own logistical supply. And when they invaded in 2022, they had massive problems with units overextending, becoming cut off from their logistics supply. Then they got isolated, then they got eliminated. So, guys, I'm just going to fast forward this real quick. I want you to watch this area here, Pokrovsk. That is the key fortress I mean, they say it's a city, but if it was in the United Kingdom, it would be called a town. You know, they say this is the key, and it is the key. They say it's a city, sorry. It's a fortress location. It's heavily armed. If this falls or gets, or the Russians manage to get behind it, it's pretty much over for the for the east of Ukraine. So let's just fast forward real quick, guys, and look at the amount of ground the Russians are taking. And as I always say, guys, look that the Ukrainians are not taking any ground back. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It's a constant onslaught. So that's up to date now, guys. So can you see now? Can you see the situation in Ukraine? How absolutely critical the situation is? The Russians are taking ground every day, and the Ukrainian front line, you know, I would say there isn't a front line anymore. You know, your image of a front line would be, you know, it would be trenches, it would be fallback positions, it would be excuse me. It would be infantry in the trenches. It would be indirect mortars just behind the infantry. It would then be artillery behind those. Then it would be command and control behind those. Then it would be aircraft behind those. Right now, from literally what I've just shown you, there is no front line, and there can't be a front line, or the Russians wouldn't have been able to move forwards that quickly. Like I said, guys, I think the only thing that's slowing the Russians down is the Russians. I think they understand the battlefield now. I think that they're moving slowly and surely, so they're not overextending. Also, these small movements of a couple of 100 meters every day, it doesn't make the media. It does not make the media. But guys, can you imagine if there was no movement in Ukraine 2 months ago, and then all of a sudden today they pushed forwards and took all that ground? It will be all over the media. So I think this is a way that Putin, he's just pushing, he's grinding, and he's slowing everything down. Guys, remember what I said yesterday, okay? I talked about the Storm Shadow missile being used. In fact, guys, let me show you a video, actually. This video came out, it's on X. I'm not sure if I can share it with you. Hang on. I'll try and put the link to the description. I think this is it here. Yeah, this one. So let me make that big. Guys, I'm going to play this video. I'll stop it. Hang on, how do we play it? No, I can't. Right, okay. Right, I've got no sound on, guys. So this is a former, well, it says there, guys, former advisor to Putin warns of nuclear war. Now, I'm just going to let this play. I may stop it at some point, but listen, just look at the words that he's saying. So he's saying that there'll be nuclear war by the end of the year, and your families will be, well, I don't want to say the keywords, but look what he's saying there. We really are living in absolutely wild times, and a lot of people don't understand. Hello, you really are this morning because it feels so good. I think it's very bad because little France, Britain, and the United States made a really big step, even jump to the nuclear war and catastrophic, destroying the whole human mind. All of yours will be killed probably by the end of the year. So he's saying now, guys, and again, I've got to take this guy with a pinch of salt. Look at his tie. You know, he's saying that, well, you've read what he said. It's absolutely wild, some of the things that are coming out of Russia now. So he's talking now. He wants him to be clear that the decision by Joe Biden, and obviously since then, since this has happened, we've had the introduction of the Storm Shadow missiles now, and we've unleashed that. We've taken the safety catch off that Storm Shadow now. So that's going to be used more and more. I'm going to come on to the Storm Shadow later and talk a little bit more about that. But this guy's saying, let me be clear, because Biden let the Ukrainians use ATACMS army tactical missile system to strike targets inside Russia. But obviously now, since this article, you can also put the United Kingdom in this category as well. So he's saying, is this going to lead to nuclear war? Let's see what his response is. Exactly. What Putin is going to press. So he's saying there that Putin is going to press the button. Let's just rewind this a little bit. Let's just go back there. So will this lead to nuclear war? Exactly. What Putin is going to press the button. I don't know what button he's insinuating, but I think I know. There you go, the button. Look at the history. World War I. I think he's right there, guys. You know, you've got nobody wants these wars, but we move towards them anyway. Now we move towards them. I'll come on to this afterwards, guys. Let's watch the video. So guys, so what we can take from that, and again, you know, take this with a pinch of salt, but you know, it's pretty, you know, it's a lot of people will be watching this and be, you know, be absolutely terrified. So let's talk about the nuclear threat first, because I know a lot of people are worried. At the height of the Cold War, there was like maybe 2, 3, 4 nuclear, I think maybe 3. There was a lot of tests every month by the United States and by the Russians or the Soviet Union. The reason these countries do these nuclear tests is to show that they've got that capacity. It's to rattle the saber, it's to show that they've got the capacity, but also it's for their own technicians, their own scientists, their own engineers to make sure that they can do this. These things are very technical. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So it's not as easy as dusting something out of the basement and, you know, putting a battery in it, like, you know, like your Christmas decorations, for example. They take a lot of engineering to do this. Now, the engineering that makes that thing go kaboom with a mushroom cloud, that's one thing. And then you've got to think about a delivery method. And then you've got to think about the engineering of putting the thing that makes the mushroom cloud into the thing with that can deliver it. So if you look at the situation on the ground now, we've not seen these two things put together for a long time, I don't think. The United States have been testing their missiles, so have the Russians, but they've not put these two things together yet. So what and again, you know, what I think, if, and it is a big if at the moment, but if these things are to be used, I think the most likely place that this would be used would be in the Kursk region. In the Kursk region of Ukraine, of Russia. Well, is it Russian? Is it Ukrainian? The Kursk region is historical Russia, but it's where the Ukrainians have pushed into and they're holding that ground now. So that's where I personally see the most likelihood of that to be utilized. I think this would be on the back of a truck. You know, that way you don't have to worry about any of the engineering problems by putting this into a launch vehicle. You know, you don't have to worry about any of the G-force, any Delta V. You can just literally put this on the back of a truck, drive it in, have all your engineers, your scientists, your technicians do their checks, do their measures, and then you just evacuate. You leave it, and then it will go kaboom. If we're talking about Russia striking other European countries, I don't see any strategic benefit right now. What I do see, though, is if there is a likelihood of this happening, it would be either Poland or Romania. Now, I'm saying this because I believe that and again, I've got no information confirming this. It's just what I suspect. I suspect that the F-16s that the Ukrainians are utilizing, I suspect that these are already being used, are already being flown from Poland or Romania. Again, you know, I've done many videos where I say I think this would happen. Back in, when was it? Back when the F-16s were announced, you had a lot of media articles saying that the Polish wanted to close the airspace over Ukraine. They wanted to fly defensive sorties. And like, guys, you can look back through my videos. I said, listen, I think this is a telegraph for letting the Polish fly over Ukraine with their F-16s, and then you're going to have Ukrainian F-16s flying from the same airfields, or potentially the Romanians flying from the same airfields, but conducting offensive sorties. I don't see any strategic benefit for the Russians to strike the United Kingdom right now. I'm not saying it's off the cards. I'm saying I don't see any benefit to it right now. The Russians would have had to push right up to the River Dnipro, and that's got to be their main intent right now. They have to secure the battlefield, and they have to take significant ground in the east of Ukraine, whereby they can form a defensive line. Because as the Ukrainians have no defensive line, the Russians have no defensive line. The Russians are pushing forwards, but that still doesn't mean they have a defensive line. To have a defensive line, you have to have a natural barrier. You have to have a natural feature. For me, it's the River Dnipro, which bisects the country east and west. So that's what I think is going to happen. There's no chance of peace talks. There's no chance of anything until this happens. Now, for people, again, for those of you who may be watching my channel for the first time and you don't, you're looking at all the stuff that's happening in the world at the moment and you're trying to make sense of it. Imagine if you're in a boxing match and you're beating the opponent. You're like Tony Bellew versus David Hay. And you're beating the opponent down. You're walking him down. You've got better cardio. You've got better, you're winning. You're taking ground every day. And then, like on the 10th round, your opponent comes out and says, "Listen, mate, do you want to should we call it even? Should we call it even and split the pot?" No, of course not. Why would you split the pot when you're winning? So that's kind of why Putin's not going to enter any peace negotiations at the moment, because he's taking ground every day. That's just how it works, guys. That is literally how it works. Nobody's entering peace negotiations while any side is pushing forwards. Now, guys, the news of the day is about Storm Shadow. What time? Right, guys. Guys, there's so much to get through. The news of the day in the United Kingdom is all about Storm Shadow missiles. So, what is a Storm Shadow? First of all, the Storm Shadow is an air-launched. It's an air-launched munition. It goes on underneath an aircraft, potentially the F-16 that the Americans gave the Ukrainians. I don't know how that works. The Storm Shadow has been built. And everything about the Storm Shadow has been built to be put on a British Typhoon. So I don't know. I guess it's not difficult to take the pylons from a Typhoon and, I don't know, weld them onto the belly of an F-16. So I guess that can be done. The potency of the Storm Shadow missile is in its reliability. Once you press the button and you let this thing and you release this thing, it will go autonomously and it doesn't come back. It's got all its own sensors. It's got all its own, it's got all its own navigation suite internally, and it cannot be hacked. You can't hack these things. They fly low to the ground. They'll hug the terrain, and at the last minute, they'll come up, they'll come high, they'll identify the target with their own onboard cameras. I mean, the engineering is fantastic. It really is a sophisticated system, and then they will strike that target. Now, the pilot has no say about, the pilot doesn't say, "Oh, we're going to hit that target." No, it doesn't work like that. The pilot just gets to the pilot will get to a location, get to an altitude, face a bearing, I don't know, northeast, southwest, whatever, 200 mils or whatever. They will face a bearing and they will press a button and that will release the Storm Shadow. That's all the pilot does. The pilot won't necessarily know where that system's going to end up. And 9 times out of 10, it would make sense for the pilot not to know, because if that pilot's shot down, if he's captured, that's just extra information that that the enemy can exploit. So, need to know basis, I would say none of the pilots actually know where these missiles are going, which leaves us to the next question. These missile systems are programmed on the ground. Now, I don't know who's programming these. I don't know and again, there are a lot of question marks and I don't have the answers. So I would say, who's programming these? Are the Ukrainians programming them themselves? Because you can't just say, here's a Storm Shadow. No, you need to know how to program the targeted information. You need to know how to input the targeting information. You need to have a good depth of knowledge of NATO operating systems. Now, are NATO going to give Ukraine access to that targeting system? I genuinely don't know. Now, we do know that there are special forces operating on the ground, so maybe they're doing something. But the reason I'm bringing this to you guys, to the four of you guys, we know that there are special forces operating on the ground because the German, what was it, the German defense minister or someone, or it was one of the, it was some German politician, they leaked this information. It shouldn't have been leaked. Those guys have families. We should do all we can to protect our guys. But that information is out there now and it's readily available. The Russians, they are not stupid. The Russians will know this. The Russians do know this. I would suspect that the Russians have people on the inside in Ukraine. I'd say the Russians have people gathering information. I'd say the Russians have people, looking at open source intelligence, social media, and they are finding this information out for themselves. So the Russians know the British involvement now. Guys, Britain is involved in this conflict. Whether we like this or not, it doesn't really matter. But Britain is involved now. So the use of the Storm Shadow, if we wasn't a target anyway, then we are a target now. There's a lot of people worried at the moment about the threat of, missiles coming over to the United Kingdom. It's not going to happen yet. And I don't see it on the cards for a long time. What I do say, and I've been saying this for like months and months, guys, probably my first videos I was talking about this, Sabotage. The threat to the United Kingdom from Sabotage is ridiculous. The threat's going to go up at Christmas when people are around Christmas markets, and this sort of stuff. The threat to the United Kingdom, the main threat is from homegrown sabotage. Now, there's a lot of illegal people in the United Kingdom, and there's a lot, by definition, they are criminals. Now, what we've seen through the rest of the world in other events that have happened, it makes no sense for our adversaries to send their best super secret spy, like, for example, the Skripal poisoning. It makes no sense for them to do that unless it's a targeted incident. But right now, we're going into a phase of green warfare where you need mass, you need to create critical mass. So our adversaries, they will be looking to employ criminal gangs to carry out acts of sabotage and potentially other criminal acts, and you guys decide what those are. If you look at the Russian incident, and I know I keep saying this, if you look at the Russian incident for when I think there was four people with those, the long things, that stuff, if I can say with rifles, there was 4 people. They caused absolute carnage in Russia at a theater. Now that cost, from what I understand, they got paid $5,000 to do that. You can't even get a camera for a Storm Shadow. Like, you can't even get a sensor for a Storm Shadow for, $20,000. So when you're talking about cost and, value for money, I guess, or it's probably not the right word to use, but it's didactically it is. Value, well, you get value when you do these attacks. $5,000, and look at the carnage, whoever did that. Whoever paid for that, look at the carnage that they caused for $20,000. This sort of stuff's unbelievable. So do we have do we have a group of criminals in the United Kingdom at the moment who could do this, who could be paid to carry out these sort of attacks, these sorts of acts of sabotage? Absolutely. It's there. It's not just me saying it now. The head of MI5 came out and said this. The old head of MI6 came out and said that. So, it's there. It's, I'll put some links in the description to this, guys. It's all there, and it's all waiting to happen. We are walking towards a global conflict of an industrial scale. Before I leave, guys, I want to talk briefly about these cuts to the UK's defence spending and what that actually... In fact, we'll talk about the landmines first, actually. So the United States have issued... they're either issuing or they've given the green light for anti-personnel landmines to be used for the Ukrainians to use them. I spoke to my friend yesterday. He said these are a different type of landmine. And again, I've no experience with anti-personnel landmines at all. So I'm just giving you guys the information I've been given. He said to me that these particular landmines that the Ukrainians are getting, these are battery powered. There's a small battery in them. And when that battery runs out, the landmine is inert. So I think that is a good thing if it works. as far as I'm concerned, guys, landmines should be anti-personnel landmines. You should just not use them. There's no need for them. We need to get rid of all of them. Now, the significance and the desperation of this is that this is kind of like the last donkey that anyone can throw at this situation in the east of Ukraine before we have boots on the ground. Guys, boots on the ground is going to be the next thing people are talking about. It's going to be the next set of rhetoric. Remember at the beginning of the video, guys, okay, the Ukrainian front line isn't there. Look at the amount of ground that the Russians are taking day and day. What I would suggest is, and what I would speculate is, that these anti-personnel landmines are going to be used in the east to form defensive lines, to form channeling groups, so the Russians, won't advance over the land. It's not going to be effective. It is not going to be effective. The Russians are just going to push people over there. They're going to push potentially North Koreans over there. They're convicts, cattle, livestock, anything like that, guys. They will just push it over and they will find a way through, guys. It's what the Russians do. All right. So at some point, we're going to see the next group of rhetoric to be boots on the ground. Guys, from what I've seen, things are moving fast, and we could have a potential where this conversation's already started before Christmas, and then the rhetoric will move from Ukraine to the Middle East. But let's not get onto that, guys. We'll talk about that in a separate video. Anyway, guys, I'm going to Mac to Grid now. I'll get you guys another, I'm going to Mac to Grid and I'll get you guys another video later.